Hi everybody, it is Kira here at Unfurl, and today's video I have so much that I want to talk about, and I'm really hoping that I can present it all in an organized way. It is basically about the way in which unhealed childhood trauma gets in the way of the awakening process. So we've watched all the Eckhart Tolle videos and we're watching all the videos on awakening, and we know that in order to come fully into the present, we connect with the stillness within us and the silence and the space, and then we become the observer of our thoughts and our feelings. We kind of start to notice more about ourselves and about life. And we get this in theory, and then we can't understand why. Why can't I switch off my mind? My mind is too busy. I just can't stop the thinking, the overthinking. So if you're one of those people who, like me, has been told all your life, you think too much, then you'll probably understand what I'm talking about. It's like this incessant chatter that is so difficult to get out of. And it's so frenzied and so manic, and yet we don't seem to know how to stop it. So something that I have come to work through myself recently was with my own therapist. Obviously, I'm a therapist. I work with other clients, but I still do my own therapy because we're a work in progress. I'm working through my stuff that I had no idea it was there. And then it pops up and I'm like, wow, I didn't even know that was there. So I was working with my own therapist, and she was asking me, where does anger go? Where does your anger go? And I say, I don't know. I don't know what I do with it, but I seem to be able to mute it. It's not like I delete it. It just gets muted. And then as we were in the process of our session, she asked me to describe that experience. And I said, it's like she's talking and suddenly this thick glass wall appears between her and me, and her voice gets very quiet, and what she's saying gets very quiet because she's asking me about things that some part of me doesn't want to go to, doesn't want to notice or acknowledge. So I unconsciously have developed this technique where I withdraw from her, turn down the volume on what she's saying. She thinks I'm looking at her, I'm nodding and I'm smiling, and it looks like I'm still present, but my mind has gone elsewhere. My mind has gone off into my own little thoughts. And I described it like I had just gone off up into the attic. And I'm up in the attic thinking my own thoughts while looking like I'm present. So she's not going to call me on it, or I'm not going to get into any trouble. Not that I'll get into trouble with my therapist, but there'll be no repercussions. So I'm there, but I'm not there. Do you know what I mean? And we talked about how this was a technique that I must have developed as a child because there were very difficult things happening. I couldn't get away from them. What did I do with the big feelings? I developed the skill of being there, looking like I'm present, but boom, going up into the attic of my thoughts. And that became the safe place. And overthinking became my way of avoiding a difficult reality, a painful reality, an impossible situation that I couldn't fix or escape from. So this was the best that I could come up with. So through the awakening process, the noise in my mind has lessened. And when I say awakening, I have difficulty with it because it's got such spiritual connotations that can derail what it actually is. Awakening is just the quietening of the noise to be with what is actually happening in that moment in time wherever you are. So that's my experience of it anyway. And the more I've become accustomed to doing that, the more I recognize, oh, I've just gone off into my mind. And sometimes it gets so busy. And then it means there's something that I am trying not to feel. There's something happening in that moment in time or that week that I don't want to hear. So I'm kind of turning down the volume on whatever's going on in me, and I'm going up into the attic of my mind. And I'm going to stay really busy up there, and I'm going to think lots of thoughts. And I find the thoughts upsetting and disturbing. Sometimes they're positive thoughts, and that's okay. I don't mind being there. But a lot of the time, you may know this, we get onto that negative train of thought about life, about people, about ourselves. A lot of it's about ourselves. And it's not comfortable and it's not fun, but we don't know how to make it stop. But I had this realization with this experience with my therapist, which was when this part of me was invited down out of the attic of my mind and into reality, I allowed this inner child in me to speak. So it was like a stream of consciousness that came out. And the words that came out were, I don't want to come out of my mind because then I'll have to face my reality and I can't cope with my reality. And I started bawling, crying. And I didn't even know I felt that way. And I realized that was my experience as a child. I had gone up there to this safe place that gets a bit frenzied because if I came back down into the reality of my experience when I was young, I couldn't cope with that. And I started to cry during the session with the therapist, and basically that was to release the overwhelm, the anguish that this young part had been holding and avoiding by staying up in the attic of the thinking mind. So the reason I am bringing this into my video today is because I think it's really important that we understand if we have unhealed trauma from our childhood. Now, trauma can be the big stuff, the really big, ugly events of life, or it can be that you lived in a home with parents who didn't get you. You were into art and music and it was a really sporty house and they thought you were a bit airy-fairy. Or you were into sport and they were all into music and poetry and thought, can't really relate to you. So either way, it's this experience of heartache. An experience of heartache in childhood because we feel alone. We feel alone, misunderstood, uncared for, ungot. We all need to feel got. So this part of us doesn't want to come out of the attic of our mind. We think we want to stop the overthinking, but there is a very young part of us that doesn't want to give it up. There is a very young part of us that goes, please don't make me give up my thinking, because then I'm going to have to come into the real world and I can't cope with that reality. I can't cope with my life. So really, I really want you to understand, don't give yourself a hard time if you're overthinking and you're stuck in the mental noise of your own head. But I know what Eckhart Tolle is saying, and I know what all the spiritual teachers are saying, and we have to silence our mind, but I can't. Understand that this is a child part of you who is absolutely terrified of giving up the only safety that they've ever known. And unless you, well, I'm going to say work with a therapist, because that's, as I tend to say, that's what I know. Unless you work with a therapist who can help you to meet this inner child, and you, the competent adult, can learn to soothe her, to be with her, to go, I have you now. You're safe. I can manage life. I know how to stay on top of things. You, my little friend, don't have to worry about any of that stuff. I got you now. And unless you learn how to notice when this child is triggered, notice what it is that she doesn't want to feel and be with her while she feels it, and a therapist helps you to do this, it is going to be very difficult to give up overthinking to come into the present. Because to come into the present means to feel, is to allow it, all that is. And sometimes what is big feelings. Big feelings that you as an adult are now able to handle. But you as a child couldn't handle it on your own. And you've managed this amazing way of checking out, but looking like you're still there, so you're not going to get into any trouble. So looking like you're there, being very good, and going up into the attic. Thinking about all sorts of anything. Because it creates this big, thick wall of glass between us and whatever is happening, and it turns down the volume of whatever is going on. And it's genius, but you can see how it keeps us from being here in the stillness of life and the beauty of what is. And that's not to say that there isn't crap going on, because there is crap going on. But we can handle it. We can actually handle it. So I'm going to share a little story. Sometimes I'm not very good at telling stories because my mind wanders a bit. But it was my son's birthday. It's his birthday tomorrow, so that's why I think of this story. About 4 years ago was his birthday, and he was probably eight or 7 at the time. And I got him a new bike for his birthday. He didn't know he was getting it. And I'd asked him what he wanted for his breakfast cereal on the morning of his birthday, because normally we have boiled eggs, we have porridge, and very sensible stuff like that. But anyway, on their birthdays, kids get to eat whatever they want that I would normally say no to. And he had decided that he wanted to get, those packets, like the multi-pack of little mini cereals, little cereal boxes, and they're always sugary or covered in chocolate or whatever. That's fine. And I said, okay, that's fine. And he knew which one he wanted. So on the morning of his birthday, he came down into the lounge and he opened a few little presents that were in there, but his bicycle was in the kitchen. And on top of the saddle of his bicycle, I had put this little box of cereal. And he came down and he opened his presents in the lounge, and then he was so excited about his breakfast cereal. I said, "Are you ready?" And he goes, "Yeah." And he opened the door of the kitchen and he saw his cereal, and he took the cereal off the saddle of the new bike, and he opened it, and myself and my daughter were looking at each other going, he hasn't even seen the bike. And he poured his cereal and he ate the cereal, and as he was eating the cereal, I said, "Do you notice anything?" And he was like, "No." And I said, "Just over there." And he went, "Oh." And he noticed the bicycle. And the reason I'm telling you this story is because that's what our minds are capable of doing. Our minds are capable of filtering out what we're not able to see, what we don't want to see what we're expecting to see, what we need to see. And if we lived in a very painful reality as a child, you can see just how effective this way of blanking out certain types of reality can be. So it totally makes sense of why we can go up into this place, the attic of our minds, and completely mute out any other reality that we're not able to see. So this leads me on to my next point, which is, if you have experienced childhood trauma and have filtered out reality that you were unable to process, and you have tuned into the breakfast cereal, the bits that you are excited about, the bits that you can cope with, this will then potentially lead you into toxic relationships where you are only seeing what is good and positive, and you're actually muting, deleting, blanking out any of the other qualities that are in someone that you can't really cope with, that are potentially like the ones you had to deal with when you were a child, from a parent or from a home environment. So you can stay in a toxic relationship for a really long time because you're focused on the cereal and you're ignoring the other bit that you don't want to see. Because if you do see the other bits, you'd have to leave the relationship. You'd have to acknowledge the pain that it's causing you, and you'd have to get out. So it's a big video for me to make, and I know that there's a lot of information, but all of these things kind of overlap. And really at the nub of it all is our brain's amazing capacity to keep us safe. But if it's unhealed, it stops us being in the present moment, facing reality. And you can see that where relationships are concerned, we have to be able to see everything that's happening. We have to be able to be present in order to make a decision that is good for us, that is in our best interest. And that may be to be single, to be alone, rather than be in a toxic relationship that is very damaging to us. Oh my God, so much information. I had no idea how I was going to get this all out, but somehow I wrote a few notes. So I'm just going to have a quick flick through. Is there anything I missed that I really need to say? Okay, yeah. Oh yes, and the other thing is, that's what I just saw in my notes. If we have developed this amazing capacity as a child to filter out all that's bad and just focus on what's good, and sometimes we have to do that as children so that we can see our parents as good. So we've developed this capacity to filter out the bad aspects, and then we go into relationships and we can filter out the not so nice aspects of a partner. Our brain, well, if we have childhood trauma, we can go one of two ways. We can either filter out all that's bad, or we can filter out all that's good. And then we go through life only seeing what's wrong, only seeing what's negative in somebody. We could be with a loving partner, but all we do is pick holes in them and see what's wrong with them and pick faults and criticize them all the time. Because in the same way that some people kind of go up into the attic of the mind and split off all the negatives, our brain can also do the opposite, which is we can stay in that negative place because that's a kind of spiky protected place, and we can filter out all that's good, that's beautiful in the world. So this awakening process is to come into the present moment with everything that is, the good, the bad, and the ugly, to see it all, to feel it all, to know what we need to do in that moment to mind ourselves. So if you are going through the awakening process and you think, well, obviously this isn't working because I'm supposed to be all zen and I just feel really busy in my mind and a bit crazy, know that the part of you that has been asked to give up the thinking is going, no, it's holding on for dear life because it really doesn't want to give up the only protection it's ever had. And without any certainty of any comfort, you're asking this young part of you to give it up, and it won't let go until it knows that you're there. You're going to meet this young part and you can soothe it, comfort it, that you have little soothing tools that you use. You see your therapist, you have trusted friends, you have your hot water bottle, you put nice fresh clean sheets on your bed to hold you when you're going through, big feelings, little beautiful acts of kindness towards yourself. That's when this little part of you will go, okay, I think I can cope with being in the present moment now because you, the adult, are here for me now and will hold me while I feel this sadness or feel this intense fecking rage that makes me want to fecking explode all over the place. You, the adult, are here for me now, so I can come out of my thinking mind, be with some of this stuff. I may have to go back up into my thinking mind for another few days to kind of reset, but in a few days I'm gonna come back down into the present moment again. So that's why the process can sometimes feel a bit stop-start. We're reacclimatizing to reality, reacclimatizing to feeling our feelings, and reacclimatizing to being present to life. Okay, big video, big video. I am sending you so much love, and I will talk to you very soon. Okay, bye for now.